Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Awareness Podcast with your host, Bill Free. And this week, it brings me joy and honor to speak with you, to bring you into a conversation with a good friend and author, therapist, psychotherapist. She's an expert in eating disorders, and she's a Course in Miracles teacher. She's just has lots of credentials, but mostly for this conversation, we're going to be talking to Rosalyn Rourke about her book that she's just recently published called When Wisdom Arrives. I know you're going to get a great pleasure out of reading this book. It's available on Amazon. And in my mind, when I was preparing for this conversation with Rosalyn and reading her book, I'm thinking as a takeaway, this should be put out there on the airwaves for anyone that has any kind of is a parent with maybe children with eating disorders, or someone that has their own kind of disorders, functions that came from addictive lifestyles, or what we're going to talk about in this conversation is maybe generational habits or curses, if you will. Everyone, I just would ask you to give a warm welcome to Rosalyn Rourke. Hi, Rosalyn, and thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. And I had an experience, Bill, yesterday, exactly what you were just saying about parents. This was a group I got to speak to that was organized by some young mothers that are friends of mine who invited their friends. So these were not spiritual seekers. These are not people that ordinarily come to any of our programs. They would not pick up a non-dual book. That is not their ilk. They are parents of middle school and young high school students. And they hadn't read the book yet. They were given the book. There were about 22 of them. And I just gave a spontaneous talk, really directed toward them the kind of message that's in the book and that Rupert does so well when he asks us to basically remember when we were 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 and now, and we have different thoughts, different feelings, different actions, and yet there's something continuous. And what is that something? And we might not have words for it, but everybody recognizes it. And I started putting in a word that's not even in the book yet, but it's about belonging. Because when we have these words, the rest of the title of the book is When Wisdom Arrives from Imagined Unworthiness to Freedom. So when we're imagining unworthiness or shame, that's that loop you were mentioning that we get stuck in. And so I presented that kind of material to these mothers, and they opened exactly the way you expected, the way you predicted. They started coming to me afterwards and saying, well, my daughter has this eating thing, and my son worries about this and goes round and round and round and round in the worry. And so what my pointer to them was, let's look at ourselves first before we try to fix our children, because chances are they're getting messages not of ill will, not of intention, but they're hearing things that are a participating part in what's happening. And so one mother said, well, I don't have eating issues, and they weren't eating issues in my country. I said, yeah, but how do you think towards yourself, this self that you imagine yourself to be, this separate self? Is what you do good enough? Or are you always striving to do better and more and improve yourself? And so that exercise where we saw the self wasn't an age and wasn't a behavior and wasn't a thought and wasn't even an action started coming in, and there were these light bulbs coming in with these mothers, and it was so beautiful to show them that they don't need to be further ahead. They just need to be in the moment with presence and say, if I've given you any messages that you need to be more. And so you see, we're not using any non-dual words. We're not using any spiritual language. We're just being in the moment with the I am, connecting to another I am and their child. So the mother's saying to the daughter, hey, if you hear me say something like that again, I'm open. You stop me, because that's not the message that we are. And so like owning it themselves, but including, and in that we're in present moment. Yeah. So we don't even need those words like awareness and consciousness, and words that really, I wrote the book partly for my own story to share, but even more because I see so many people that glaze over with the words consciousness and even awareness. They take it to mean my awareness, like my insight from a personal person. And that, I just wanted to write a story, because we learn through stories, a story that used no jargon, none, and that just could be related to at any point in life without being a spiritual seeker. Maybe that will come next, but maybe they'll get it without studying, without the direct experience is exactly what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes, I want to show the audience the book cover so they'll recognize it. It's a beautiful hardcover book that Rosalyn has published, and it is filled with wisdom. The thing I love about this book, Rosalyn, I like the fact that the beginning is a fable. It's a story. It's a fable story that is that gives a clear understanding for the way we're more or less impregnated with habits, with what the Old Testament would call the curses of the generational curses that are passed on from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. And it reminds me of an Old Testament verse that says the sins of the father will be passed on to the third and fourth generation. And you spell it out just like super clear in your fable, and then also the story, very short application of the second half of this book. It sort of describes your relationship with your mother is the it's the set point, and probably her with her mother is the set point that impregnates the psyche and the experience into the mind that now thinks that it's a separate self, and it's taking this in as internally. This is, and owning it, and it gets passed on to the third and fourth generation. And I just love how you caught it. I think you ended up catching the mistake in the pattern that was being passed on to Melissa in this story. And then it was passed on to you first when you were 12 years old. And oh my God, I can't believe you weighed 212 pounds. That was a shocker for me. And then you overcame that, but you didn't overcome the you didn't overcome the curse until you realized that had been passed on to Melissa, and then you saw the big picture for what it was, and oh my God, it was just it. So I this short story book that you've given to the universe, or that you've published for mankind, is going to be very helpful for parents that have children of that begin to get overweight or have addictive behavior situations. It's just so poignant. It's accurate in its application. I speak, I'm one of them. I have a son that when he was 12 years old, he began gaining weight, getting a little chubby, and I'm starting to tell him at 12 years old, son, you need to slow down the food consumption. You need to stop eating so much candy. And because he weighed 170 pounds at 12 years old, it was 20 pounds heavier than his dad. And I became concerned about that. And he went down the rabbit hole. When he would go out of town on some kind of a retreat or something that we'd send him on, we'd clean up his bedroom, repaint his walls, pull the bed away from the wall, and it would be packed 2 inches thick, all on two sides with candy wrappers. he was binge eating candy and just growing like a an expanding balloon. And so I had that, but I also did the same thing. I shamed him, I guilted him, I did all the things that a parent that's afraid does in error, to try to keep him from turning into this fat man. And right now, today, he weighs 300 pounds. He's a big man. And I am reading your book, Rosalyn, going, oh my God, I did that. Yes, I did that. Oh, damn you, Bill. What did you do that for? I did all the things that you speak about in your book. And I just think that for parents or brothers or sisters or grandparents, anyone that knows someone or is someone that would benefit from the content of this book, it is so helpful, so valuable. And the protocols in it, Rosalyn, they're awakening tools. They're tools for awakening. So tell me more about this fable storyline that's in the first part of this book. How did this come into play?
Well, it was created from that desire to. Well, let me step back a minute and I'll finish that sentence in a second.
Okay.
When Melissa unexpectedly died, I had a moment which could be called an awakening moment, but that is not the important part. I had been suffering with grief, just letting it rip, even though I was a therapist, I didn't even try to see what stages of grief I was in. I didn't try to use A Course in Miracles or Non-Duality. I did not, I just let it rip. Just let the pain and the suffering just go.
Right. So let's pause right there for a minute. For you that don't know who Melissa is, it's Rosalyn's 39-year-old daughter. She passed when she was 39 years
Unexpectedly. We had no illness, so one day,
right.
one day she's alive, and we we had a rapprochement. I love that French word. We had a complete coming together. Some would call it forgiveness, but it was way beyond forgiveness because there was no longer anything to forgive. We had reached this place that you just dream of if you've been in the kind of pain that I was in with Melissa, the judgment that Bill spoke of, the shaming, which was never intentional, but judgment is shaming. And so we'd been through the rough times, and we were now in this pure place of there's a song that says, I'm not your father, you're not my son, we're just two people. That's the way I felt. That song describes where Melissa and I were. We were just two beings sharing life, sharing wisdom. It was like the most amazing, beyond anything I experienced. And then she died. So I felt entitled to just let it rip. And then I was shaken, and my experience of it was I was shaken from outside. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't a vibration. It wasn't anything inside. It doesn't matter what it was. That's not the important part. The important part is that I realized I was okay. That was the feeling like, where did the suffering go? I'm okay now. And then the next thought was the taboo. Do I dare admit it? Because a mother who loves her daughter has to suffer, right? And I went, no, that doesn't make any sense. How does that honor Melissa? That isn't even true. So my brain started scrambling, but I was wide open and I wasn't suffering.
How long after her death is this?
It's a little
scenario?
tricky because my memory is such a blank. I wasn't tracking months. I would say 5 months, not that long.
Right, right.
That's a guess. It could have been longer, could have been shorter.
So you began awakening awareness, or your true I self began to realize that suffering wasn't
It was
you weren't
gone.
suffering
It was
anymore.
gone. I wasn't suffering, and it was
Right.
so. Then, after I resided in this more in the sense of it stayed as my home. It has never left as my home. I play in the world. I get involved in the world. I have feelings. I have thoughts, but the world isn't my home the same way that okayness is. It's just like a comfort that has never left that I can return to. But then I started to say, okay, so when I came back to feeling more settled in this, I said, what happened? Oh my God, this is non-duality applied. This is like, don't touch it. Because when in those first moments of that okayness, when I said, okay, Melissa's still dead, but I'm not suffering. I remember she's dead. And just like the little girl says at the end of the fable, her name is Jem, and she's visited by a wise woman named Wisdom. She says, I could remember my story about my mother, but that's what you came here to teach me, right? To not go back to those looping thoughts, feelings, stories, and stay with this okayness that I found. And so it was when I started thinking, oh my God, even though I didn't try to apply non-duality, the direct experience, it's don't touch it. You teach that. Don't touch it. Let the thought and feeling be acknowledged. Oh, I had an aggressive thought. That's A Course in Miracles. Acknowledge it. Tell the truth. But that doesn't mean you need to add to it the next moment. And that's where the loops happen. And so the little girl, she fights with the wisdom character. She says, this doesn't seem like a gift. I'm not my thoughts and feelings. well, where's the gift here? But there is a gift.
Like
in
she was losing something.
Yes, she thought she was losing something, the way adults try to hold on. So my desire, if I had one about the book, is that it even extends to anybody who doesn't have an eating issue or another addiction, but believes they are their thoughts and feelings, because that's huge. When
Mm-hmm.
you actually realize those are energies that change, just like science tells us, they're energy in motion. We are in motion, we are energy, but we haven't learned to apply it. So that's where the shame comes. If I think I am my thoughts and my feelings, then I'm going to feel pretty badly that I had this aggressive thought. But if they're just happenings and they're contagious, if I'm in a bad mood, I can probably, if I were your loved one, make you feel in a bad mood pretty soon without even talking. I could start moving things around and you'd be like, at least what's going on? So they're contagious.
Mm-hmm.
And so the minute we realize that we're feeding hurtful thoughts, and we experience it as a choice, but we don't get into who's choosing. There is a moment where you can add to it and be aware that you're adding to the hurtful, or you can just put that space there or say, no, thanks. It's a visceral thing, like you're turning right or you're turning left. You can, the movement is there. Let's call it the movement rather than
Yeah.
a choice,
Yeah.
because that puts you back to your head.
Right, right. Well, I remember in your story, I'm not, I don't remember if it was the fable or the story, but I remember you having some moments of feeling almost like, is it okay if I don't need to suffer? Is it
Yeah.
okay if I don't need to grieve?
Yes.
So, and so walk us through that a little bit, because a lot of people that have the death in a family member, a friend, or they feel like, oh, I have to grieve this. Well,
Yes. Yes.
there's a silver lining in
Yeah.
in that recognition. Tell us about yours.
Yeah, so there was that moment where where I said, do I dare admit that I'm not hurting at this moment, that I'm okay? And I recognized I could go back to hurting. It was not even a switch flip. I mean, I could go back to there so easily. It was right there to be tasted, taken. And that part of me that has always been a truth seeker, even before I found spirituality. Some of us have that. It's just the truth means more than even our story, like when we see it. And and it was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I can't feed that lie that love is suffering. That we're told that in the culture. Somebody wears black for 10 years, you say, oh, they must have loved their daughter. What why does that make that love? Like, and I asked myself, did you love Melissa? Absolutely. Do you still love Melissa? Absolutely. Do I have to suffer? Actually, no, but still there was a going against a taboo. Like, dare I? Yeah, okay, I'll admit it to myself. I'm okay. But that would be another big step to let anybody else know it. And the truth is, I've just lived it. I don't go around saying my daughter died and I'm okay. Why? There's no need to do it. I just show up, and that's been the movement, is just show up fully in life, fully in growth, fully in life. I mean, I can't even say it any better,
Hmm.
without preaching anything,
Mm-hmm.
giving other people permission not to hurt. because psychological suffering is that joining of hurtful thoughts and feelings again and again. The first hurtful thought and feeling is not a problem. It's just that when we feed it means we believe in it. And now we're continuing that trajectory. And it's like a direction in a path. You're going this way or you're going that way. It's that clear for me. It's this, the cesspool, the deep dive into suffering, or freedom. It's not even anything in between.
Right, right. It seems like it seems like to reach that recognition, it seems like almost like an intense suffering takes place before someone comes to the realization that that freedom is available. And recently I interviewed Steve Taylor. He's a well-known author and someone that Eckhart Tolle mentions as one of the most influential authors and psychologists of our time. And in his research, Steve Taylor has found, after interviewing hundreds of people, that awakening occurs in most situations. It doesn't happen so much. It's only like 20% of the people that are on a spiritual path or on some kind of a path tradition. Only 20% of those actually awaken from the teachings. It's more like 80% of the people that have awakening experiences have them as a result of an intense psychological or traumatic experience. It sounds like you had an experience like that. And it also sounds like Melissa had an awakening prior to her death.
She did. Absolutely, she did. That would be another whole story to tell you about the place that Melissa was at. She would hear messages and she worked with people, and they said there's no way that she could know these things that she spoke of. But she would hear messages, buy this dress and leave it in the hotel room for this person, buy it in a size 14, auditory messages like with a clarity. And she would do it. That was the thing. I didn't question the messages. I questioned, like, wow, you doing this stuff? You're buying a new dress and leaving it, And she would just do it. They said, one day she said, they had me wearing ridiculous clothes today. She would do it. And to me, that was like all that you ever hear about. Listen to the messages, like surrender, all those words. I was seeing it in front of me in a very unusual way, certainly very different than mine. Jenny Beal said something very clear to me recently. Most of your audience knows Jenny Beal because she's a fan favorite around here.
Mm-hmm.
But I was speaking to someone in one of her conversations, and she said, you took the understanding from your awakening rather than trying to replicate the experience. Now that's a paraphrase, but you hear so many people coming to someone like Muji or Rupert and say, I had this experience 10 years ago, and the lights and the flow and the this and that, and I haven't had it again. They're trying to go back to the experience.
Yes.
That never occurred to me. It just never did. It was the understanding that at any moment it's suffering or freedom. And the little girl in the story, so I call the story the fable, and my sharing the memoir, just to differentiate them.
Right.
And the wisdom character plays games with the little girl so that she has the experience of freedom. And freedom for her is she's forgotten her weight, she's forgotten her issues, she's forgotten her pain and her relationship with her mother. And she's just in that moment of freedom. So she calls it okayness, just like I did. And she can use that. Nobody needs to have that shaking that I had. That was just a moment for me. But everybody has moments of freedom. We have it in deep sleep, but we don't trust the letting go. We have it in nature. Some of us have it in music. Not everyone has it in nature. Some people have it when they paint. And if we are trained to use that as our home, we can have exactly what I have. You don't need to have the tragedy or the awakening, if you want to call it that. We just need to use our experience, our direct experience of letting go the thoughts and feelings because they're not us. I love that one sentence. If I had one sentence in the book, it would be this one. If thoughts and feelings were truth, they would be called facts.
Right. Yeah.
And
That's
if we take that all the way in to our thoughts and our feelings and not give them that idolization, that love, that respect, and that's pretty weird for a psychotherapist to say, because I spent 30 years honoring people's feelings
yeah.
and pursuing them in the history and
Yeah.
and now they don't interest me except to be honest that I just had that moment and then not feed it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I like I mean, that's also in the fable under the title, Welcome all thoughts and drop the rope. And I like that metaphor because it's not a doing
It's
metaphor. It's an
letting go.
activity of release.
Yes, that's so well said. Yes, yes, and that that illustration with the person holding the tightrope, the tug of war, excuse me, and the face is all because that's what it's like when we're struggling and when we're looping and we're going round and round and everything is new. Possibility. We have a possible new moment when we drop the rope and drop the thoughts and feelings. Because science says in 90 seconds we'll have a new one if we don't feed the old one. It's
Yeah.
possible. Possibility is such a great word to people who are suffering. Because just speaking of grief again, when we've bought into love is suffering, then we don't imagine a new moment ever for us. Life is, I believed it when I was hurting. It was like my life is over. Never mind the rest. And even when you want to eat again, you're so shocked that there's desire again, because that's how it is for most people, especially if there's unfinished business. I really was one of the lucky ones because I have no regrets about Melissa. I have no regrets at all. And I 100% accept that it was supposed to be exactly that way.
Yeah.
We should have gotten her a blood test. She shouldn't have listened to us about another doctor. Nothing. It was exactly the way it was supposed to be because there was no, I'm not going back to the thoughts and the feelings and the what ifs and that's suffering.
Yeah. And, when you look at life experiences, if you have a choice to look at it as how did this experience help me? Well, Melissa's experience, besides being an example of her own awakening, she was an example for you, but also her death became the catalyst for your life. It
Yeah.
became the catalyst. And I don't know how I don't know, this storyline that you, or this fable, it's the story in a teaching, and it offers, and this is the other thing I love about your book. You call the protocols that are available for the reader to access these teaching moments, these examples for their own experience, something that can be internalized, something that can be replicated or used for as a model, a protocol for someone to have their own clarity around the experiences that are impregnated or that are traumatized as a child, or just passed on as a contagious experience from parents or family members. It can be cleared up in these protocols that you offer in this book. I love this one that you have in the same chapter that I just mentioned about believing your thoughts. You call it gentle. Wisdom says gentle listening is simply listening to our thoughts without judging them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What a beautiful way to say that and to share that. How was this experience applicable in your own life?
Well, I just think not being afraid of your thoughts and feelings. If you don't judge them, then it's no big deal that you had an aggressive thought towards someone or something. It's nothing. That is such a help to be gentle to yourself. It all starts with yourself. How you treat yourself is how everything is going to be. So you can't be kind and wonderful to everyone and be ugly to yourself, because the truth is the ugliness, because it's more powerful than what you're striving for. So it's the meaning we make. And if we're continuing the story, or if we're judging our thoughts and feelings, we can't be open and gentle, because judgment is the opposite. So stepping away, when we're looping, we're not stepping away, we're in it. And the little girl gets to play games because that's the only way she can step away from the thoughts and feelings. So even remembering music, if that's your thing, even remembering nature. The problem with that is believing it's the music and the nature and not your essence. If you start to realize that from that generality, that you weren't any age and you weren't any thought and you weren't any feeling or action, you're something else. You don't have to name what that is. Then that's something else that's, is continuous, can be your new home. And you can go there when you're in the middle or tempted to judge a thought or feeling, where you're tempted not to be gentle, where you're tempted to not let it be just an energy. It isn't you. What's the harm? Nothing happened. It was a thought. It was a feeling. It's nothing. To get that perspective, I would suggest going to that thing or that place or that energy that feels more neutral, where you're not involved in the story, and then valuing it. That's what's missing. People have that. They have nature, they have this music, whatever it is. But just like deep sleep, we don't value it and learn from it. Like, oops, that's suffering. Oops, this letting go is everything. It seems like nothing. The ego, the personality, wants to make it harder, wants to make, it can't be that easy. It's no, it is that easy.
Right. Yeah.
This or that. And I would just say, is there any movement? I love the word movement even above choice, because choice
Mm.
cements the person, the separate person, and puts us back in our minds,
Yeah.
which I choose, and then you're back here. But is there any movement away from the hurting thought and the
Right.
hurting feeling? Do I have to join it?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned nature, music, art as those elements of they're reminders of our essence, because they are expressed. They're brought forth from our essence, and they remind us of our true nature.
Exactly.
And it's those are the characteristics, actually, of
There's
awakening.
an action. There's an action. There's a letting go. If we have that oneness experience with art or music or nature, we know that it's our direct experience. We know letting go of the personality. You can't have that oneness in nature if you haven't let go.
Yeah.
So owning that, valuing that, and making that your home, and that you don't need nature, you don't need art, you don't need music. It's there always, if you let go of the outer world of fixing, doing better, getting more, having that we can play there. But if it stays our home, our best home, it's going to be more suffering. It
Right.
just is.
Those are but reminders of the true nature, right?
Yes, yes. But it's the letting go, because we have to own it. We have to know, we have to own that we know it. We, so people wait for the shaking that I had or whatever somebody else had, and we discard this, our own experience of nature. Well, that was the music, that was the nature. No, it was you. It was that continuous
Yes.
you, that you allowed nature to show you, that you allowed the art, so you let go the rope of the belief that you are separate and that
Yes.
you have to do something.
Hmm. Yeah. Well said. That's perfect for and that's exactly what Jem experienced when wisdom invited her in the fable. Wisdom invited her to what was the thing that Jem was doing that caused
Future
her.
pacing. Was it future pacing with
Yes.
the computer? Yeah.
Yes, yes. And it more or less caused her to forget about her
Issues.
personal
Yeah.
self-identity, her weight, or the
Yeah.
story, or
Yeah.
it put her in the zone of
Yes.
of
Yes.
of awakening. It gave her a glimpse of her
Yes.
true nature.
Yes, yes. And the thing that's different about Jim, who's 11 years old, and our typical us, is that she went like I did. What happened? Where did it go? And wisdom says, and what size were you when you were playing video games and you had friends? Oh, I was no size. And what stops you from clicking accept when I'm not here? Well, I thought they'd want to know me. So she started her story and then they'd see me. And she said, but it didn't happen that way. And then she asked her, well, what kind of a friend would you like? And she says, oh, I'd like someone who would see me and hear me and be a good friend and be fun. And she said, but you didn't mention weight. Like, I thought that was the most important thing, that friends choose weight. So she had somebody be a pointer for her. But the important part of the story is that even an 11-year-old girl could recognize she let go of all those looping thoughts and feelings and had that feeling of okayness right now. And later on, when she thought she could go backwards with her mother, she could go back to the old fears that her mother was looking at her tummy, she said, no, but that's what you came here to teach me, right? That I don't need to go back to that I could stay with this okayness. And then wisdom says, well, what if someone doesn't like you at school? They say, I don't like you. And she said, oh, I would know they hadn't found their okayness yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really great. That was where and wisdom, that's where Jem was having this clear understanding of her awakening experience. And she was able to, as you say, let go of the rope of beliefs, of trauma, of shame, of blame. She found freedom from the old image of herself.
Yeah. And you know, that word residual, I think it's so important for anybody. I don't believe in, I don't think it's useful to think of the onion. I know it's very popular
You
that
mean
think
the
it's
onion
a
that needs to
layer
be
of
peeled?
yeah, and that when you go when these thoughts and feelings from the old stuff pop up, it's just another layer of the onion.
Yeah.
I think that is not as helpful as residual. The thoughts from conditioning will pop up again, but do you join them? Do you recognize, oh, that's suffering, I could go there, or oh, here's freedom right in this second?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
find that word residual because then you don't have to judge it. Oh, bad. I must not have cured that. I must not be awake. I must not, whatever. I'm not as
Yeah.
far as I thought I was. No, it's just an old thought and feeling. Of course, they're going to come back. You lived it however long. But this right now is available again, right now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like residual. It's clearer, and it doesn't feel like it's
Go back.
never ending,
Yeah.
more peeling to do.
And then it doesn't
Yeah.
it prompt you to identify with it again. It's just that old thing. It's a thing. It's nothing. It's not
Yeah.
even you. It's not your person. It's nothing. So it just freedom now is always available. And that's shocking to us if we, the words are easy, but to really take in that possibility. And isn't that what neuroscience tells us? That our brains are actually elastic and plastic. It's very important not to feed that identification with your old story. And onion and peeling the onion puts you right back in a new layer of the new story, of the old story. And it's very, very tempting. And residual just means that we've all been conditioned by our family, by our society, by our communities. And there it is again as the prompt from the old, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean it's you. You don't have to do anything with it, like work on it, let it go again, take it back. You don't need to, but don't be scared of it. You expect it. You've lived how many years with those thoughts and those feelings looping back and forth? Of course, it's going to come back as a thought or a feeling. But if a thought or a feeling isn't you, there's nothing to do. It's just energy. And that at any moment, every moment, there's that possible movement to freedom. And it's right there, always right there.
Yeah.
I had only one moment where I was ever tempted to go back down the tunnel of suffering. And I don't know if it would be useful, but I'll share it with you. My niece was visiting with her little children, like 2 and 4. And I said, this could be Melissa visiting. And this wave of pain with her children that she didn't have. And this wave of pain and suffering came back. It was briefer than my words to describe it. It
You
just was.
mean this was an internal voice
Yeah.
thought?
So, I saw my beautiful niece that I love with her children, and there was that thought, this could be Melissa, and with her children. And that wave immediately came back of she's dead or whatever. They didn't even have words. It was just pain. And it was like, I allowed it that whole minute enough to make me want to grab back onto freedom. And I said, no, I'd rather be here with my niece now and enjoy her children. That suffering, the memory of that suffering can be our teacher if we're willing to know the freedom and make that home. Because the suffering, it knows how to do that. I mean, you had so many years, if you're like me, whatever it is your thoughts were, you've had years with them. And they're ready. It's not bad. It's not wrong. It's not unspiritual. It's just energy. Like if you throw the ball up, it's going to come down. It's the law of physics. If you've had a thought for 50 years, 40 years, 60 years, and a feeling that repeated, it's going to come up, but not as an issue. It's just a residual.
Right.
And we're always, at every moment, free to choose, and I don't really like choose, to take the movement. It does feel like a choice.
It does to the mind, but that's because the mind doesn't realize. It doesn't, the mind never has the awakening experience. So it's grasping for an answer. It's grasping for a doing.
And a complexity. The mind loves the complexity. Make it hard, make a lot of steps, I have to study for 10 years and stay on the meditation cushion even longer till my back hurts and my butt hurts, and maybe then something will happen. Right?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
It's right now. It's available right now by letting go of my interest in that stuff.
Yeah.
It can
And
happen.
even letting go is limited. The letting go doesn't really happen. It releases itself on the recognition of the true I.
Yes. But even if we don't have that developed ideation and a pathway like you and I have, if you just go to the simplicity of this hurts and this doesn't.
Yes. Well, that's why I love the language in your book, like the language of okayness offers freedom.
Yeah, and thoughts and feelings that are hurtful cause suffering, psychological suffering. And everybody knows the difference between a thought that says, take a sweater, it's cold out, versus you screwed that up. We know the difference.
Right.
And one is hurtful and one is neutral. And there are so few neutral thoughts that you don't have to worry about it. You'll recognize it when they're there, and just start looking for, is there anything hurtful about this thought or feeling? Do I want to continue joining it? Is there any movement away? Is there any movement toward freedom or peace? Or I think it feels like nothing. The action is all in those thoughts and feelings, the drama, the hype of it, that this neutrality or this okayness doesn't seem exciting to the person. That continues the attachment, even if it's hurtful.
Right. So it's almost like the okayness is the quiet witness.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like and from the okayness is a sort of a bridge for someone that's not spiritual, someone that doesn't have a tradition, that doesn't have, it's not about something awakening. It's that okayness is still a mechanism for the bridge of no judgment, for the bridge where wisdom can come in, and it sets the space, the psychological space for gentle listening to reveal itself.
Yeah. And freedom is right there.
Yeah.
People would be so shocked that this peace that passes all understanding, this freedom is in that nothingness. That's okayness. It doesn't even sound like an attractive word to people wanting to get more, like you'll be okay. Well, I don't want to be okay. I want to be exceptional. I want to be extraordinary. I want to succeed.
Yeah.
What if everything you were looking for from that success was in the okayness? Would you want it? Would you be interested? Would you try it out? Just try it out. If you want to reject it and go back to the suffering, it's there, available anytime.
Yeah. You give okayness in your book a cool description when you call it, or a sort of a role. Ask your okayness what to do. This is what Jem says to mom, and when she's speaking to mom, and that's important, because you can actually, that's asking your internal guide, your okayness, love, pure presence, whatever you want to, whatever other kind of, your higher power, God of your understanding, any of those things will work. Ask your okayness what to do, you'll know. That's a brilliant way to give someone a useful tool that will give them the wisdom that they're looking for, the gentle, the next step, the where to go, what to say to whom. It is that you're inviting the reader to have a direct experience with something that they may not even they don't know about, and they don't need to know if they just follow this protocol.
Yeah, that was a very touching line, even for me, because I was finding the right words as the author, finding the right words that are not religious, that are not even non-dual, but to stay with the purity and simplicity of the direct experience. And that we do know, and that there is a movement that some people feel it as a movement, some people see it or hear it or just do it, but it's a knowing.
Yeah, yeah. It's all right here. Well, Rosalyn, this is a gem
Thank
of a
you.
book, and that really concludes the fable to getting into the next half of the book, which is your memoir companion, your story that is really what the fable is about. And this has been an awesome introduction and discussion about your new book. I'm very happy to share this with the listeners here on the Awareness Podcast. And thank you for being my guest today for this discussion, your brilliant new book. And thank you for sending me a copy, and for bringing this forth to our audience and the world. And for those of you that don't know Rosalyn, she is also one of our co-hosts on our weekly book study, and she's involved in many things that the Teachers of God Foundation, now known as the Center for Awakening, is presenting and helping the world with support of. And Rosalyn is one of our supporting members. And thank you, dear, for this time that we could spend together.
Thank you. It's been so much fun and so enlivening, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalyn. That's awesome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.